Thank you.
You started off your career as a folk singer, right?
That's right. 20 years ago this year now. It's a long time.
Must have been a little. I can never picture you being
No,
little.
I was never little, that's for sure. I started out when I was very young, though. I was 15, 16 at the time. And playing folk stuff and blues stuff around folk clubs. Never really got involved with bands really until my late teens, early 20s.
Mm-hmm. Your electric blues band was probably the first white electric blues band in England, right?
Yeah, that's true. Probably in the world. It's a thing that we had going with Alex's Corner. Well, I'd known Alex's Corner since about 1957, but we actually got blues incorporated on the road and going in the early 60s, around about 60, 61. Mm-hmm. What sparked us off was seeing Muddy Waters noticed them when they came over to tour with the Chris Barber band in, I think it was about 1957, 58, and they came over with amplified instruments, which completely turned Europe upside down, because up to then we'd been used to people like Bill Brunsey and all the rest, Sonny M. Brownie, of course, and the rest of the acoustic blues players. So hearing electric players for the first time, you know, a lot of people were quite shocked by it all, and they said, "This is not the blues. This is something else." But we loved it, and although I've never really been into electric guitar playing myself, I've been able to make that step. You know, the people eventually that we got to hear, like B.B. King and T-Bone Walker and all the other greats, you know, it's just magical.
Who else was in that band with you?
Well, the late and great Cyril Davis on harp. He died, 12, 20, seems like yesterday, 12 years ago now. Cyril died, and Mick Jagger was in it. He was just literally, well, he wasn't even out of school at that time. He was only about 15 or 16 himself then. It was in 1961. And Charlie Watts was the drummer. And various people were coming in and out of the band all the time. I cut out for Germany in 1962 and said goodbye to them all. And I spent a lot of time over there.
Did you get away? Were you getting away from the music as well as the people or the area?
No, not at all. I was over in Germany. I was playing blues music. I was singing with a lot of jazz groups, including Horace Silver from this country, and getting into jazz singing. A lot more New Orleans, Dixieland style bands I was playing with. I'd do a spot with the band and then do another spot on my own, just playing guitar.
Through the years, you've changed singing styles several times.
Oh, right, yeah. I'm somewhat of a chameleon, actually. People never know what to expect of me next, either in appearance or musical content or whatever, but I suppose really my roots are still in the blues.
Listen, was there any resentment in, say, England when white people started doing the blues?
Not really at all, because apart from a small pocket of us, some very small minority, that kind of music hadn't been heard by the public at large at all. I mean, records by blues artists were just next to impossible to obtain in England at that time. There were a few imports that one could get hold of from America, or the French Disque Vogue label actually were very good at putting stuff out. They had a lot of Bill Bruns's things, and there was a Danish label too, a small Danish label that produced blues stuff. But the major commercial labels really didn't bring anything out until London in those days brought out the album The Best of Muddy Waters, which had on all those classics like The Hoochie Coochie Man and Long Distance Call and all those. So that really was the first breakthrough of music. And then Pi Records started issuing a subsidiary label called, what did they call it, the World of R&B or something like that. So all people like Sonny Boy Williamson, etc. were all coming through then. But as I said before, in the 50s and the early 60s, those very few of us that were playing this kind of music, that's the only way the British public ever heard the blues.
Could you define the attraction of the blues for, here in the United States, young white people are always interested somehow or other. You go, I went to see Sonny Terry Brown and McGee the other night. There isn't any black people to come to see him. It's an all-white audience. And I kind of wonder how somebody outside the United States would relate to that kind of music.
Well, my first confrontation, if you like to call it that, with the blues came in 1953 when I saw Big Bill Broonzy for the first time. I think as much as the music, it was the power and magnificence of the man that really turned me on. I mean, Bill Broonzy was a giant. He was a very tall man, nearly as tall as me. Very beautiful looking guy, and just majestic. And it was as much that as the music that turned me on. But I think it's the same with a lot of the great blues performers. They are larger than life as men themselves. I mean, Muddy Waters is an incredible looking guy who has an aura, a charisma about him. Leadbelly, well, of course, I'm too young to have seen Leadbelly because he died in 1949, but people I know who did see him said he was, just one of the most incredible people ever, that you were just literally hooked just to the moment he walked on stage.
When Mick Jagger was in that first group, did you have any inkling of anything to come? Was there any special talent he showed then?
I really didn't know, but then I didn't ever think that what we were starting off at in those days anyway was going to be of any commercial thing. Of course, now it has turned the whole world upside down. It has become the mainstream, the backbone of rock music, popular music these days. We were doing it purely for our enjoyment, as long as we had our train fare home and enough to have a couple of drinks during the evening. It wasn't, we weren't thinking of any commercial rewards at all, and never dreamt that this kind of music was going to become so international and acceptable as it has become, and big business as it is now.
You think that's affected the music at all, the business aspect of it?
In some respects. A lot of people who used to be very nice as people have turned a little bit strange. And I think the 70s definitely has brought all the neurotics out. I mean, that's for sure. I mean, a lot of my very close friends of mine, I shan't mention any names, but, the 70s came and they all started turning very peculiar, very insulated and very neurotic. And of course, just before the 70s, this decade that we're in now, it was being welcomed as the age of Aquarius, wasn't it? When everything was going to be all light and beautiful and peace, and everyone's turned most peculiar, I found, anyway.
I want to sort of approach this thing chronologically, but I sort of want to jump a little bit. Both Rod Stewart and Elton John were in groups with you,
That's
too,
right? Yeah. Well, quite a number of people. I've always believed in surrounding myself with talented people, and I guess I've got an insight that tells me when people are talented, even if it isn't immediately obvious on the surface. I mean, I knew that Rod was going to be something huge. I knew that Elton had the makings of a great musician, and many other players and singers that have been in various bands of mine. I've got that intuition. I wish that I'd had that kind of head on me, the pounds, shillings and pence, or dollars and cents as you have here, that would sort of make me into a businessman, because probably I'd be a millionaire, trillionaire, or whatever you like kind of air right now, if I'd actually become all these people's agent or manager. But I just haven't got that kind of head.
I meant to ask you before whether you object to be calling Long John.
No, not at all. In fact, my next recording that I'm working on here in LA for Casablanca, I'm insisting that the long part of my name, is accentuated, because I think the majority of people know me as Long John Baldry now anyway. I mean, it flows. Like, that's 3 words is much better than 2, and it flows much better, and we're telling nobody any lies, because I'm probably the tallest guy around on the scene. 6 feet 7.5 is long, isn't it? Why it was dropped originally for the 2 recordings, the 3 recordings that I've had out in these last few years, Warner Brothers, for some reason, felt that the use of the prefix long was undignified. Now, I can't really understand that, but I went along with that. I said, well, if you feel that John Baldry alone is going to be more dignified, have John Baldry. But I've But all my friends know me as Long John. They call me a few other names as well, but Long John is how everybody knows me.
I might also mention, for the benefit of the audience, about how Elton John got his name.
Oh, that's right, yeah. Elton John, originally his name is Reginald Kenneth Dwight, although he's had it changed to Elton John now by Deepole, so it's all official. But he was looking for something, when he left the band, and was looking for something unusual to have as a stage name, because Reg Dwight is a bit, it's a very straight name to have. And he thought, well, now what can I have for a stage name? And he chose the Christian name of our saxophone player at that time, Elton Dean. Mm-hmm. And Elton Dean's, it really is Elton. His name is Elton, you see. Elton Dean, together with my Christian name, John Baldry. So Elton John. Where the Hercules came from, I don't know. That was added in the middle sometime later.
Ah, fine. There was, let's see, the first group was Blues Incorporated, right?
That's right, yeah. Although I had been singing around with one or two odds, Dixieland, New Orleans-y kind of bands like Chris Barber in England and Acapulco. I think people know Acapulco, don't they? Because he had a hit with a rather lush recording called Stranger on the Shore. Do you remember that?
I remember that, yes.
That had nothing to do with jazz, but it was a very nice clarinet solo over a whole bank of strings, 101 strings or whatever. I worked with Acapulco and a few other of those bands of that ilk. But the first blues band in England, well, maybe the world, white people playing it anyway, I think, was Blues Incorporated.
Then there was Bluesology.
Well, Bluesology came much later, actually. I'd gone away to Germany in '62, and then on my return I found that everyone had gone their different ways. Mick had formed the Rolling Stones. Mm-hmm. Alex Corner had a band on his own with various people, and Cyril had formed a band called the Cyril Davis All-Stars. I came back from Germany and joined them. And then on January the 7th of '64, Cyril died, unfortunately, and I took the band over and called it Long John Baldry and the Hoochie Coochie Men, after Muddy's song. And it was just a couple of days after that that I took Rod into the band. Having discovered him singing on a railway station, playing harmonica and singing. He only knew 3 songs at that time. Took him about a year to learn any more. Just kept repeating the same song.
Was he eager to become a professional?
No, I used to have to kick him and hit him and scream at him to make him do things. Wouldn't get out of bed. You know, I was the driving force behind him, I suppose. Had to get a whip to him in those days.
As kind of an aside, was there some other interest that he had?
No, he was just bone idle and lazy, but he's livened himself up a lot more since then. But I like to think that it was through my efforts that we now have a famous person, and indeed a great singer amongst us.
From Hoochie Coochie Men came Bluesology?
No, before that we had a group called the Bluesology. Hoochie Coochie Men disintegrated somewhat due to lack of funds. I mean, I was, towards the end, having to borrow money to keep the band alive. That particular time I was paying the band probably the highest wages any musicians had in England, because I've always felt that the musicians should come first, no matter what. And but I just made myself very, very broke, and I was borrowing money, and the thing just disintegrated. So then came the formation of the Steam Packet, which again involved Rod, but this time with Julie Driscoll and Brian Auger and his band, and we were all on shares of it all. So that worked out much more easy economically, so that if we all did well in one particular week, then we had bread in our pocket. If we weren't earning, then we all starved together, rather than me having to be the big boss man and find money to feed people, you know. And that went on for quite a while, and then that disintegrated in fall of '66, and then I went out on the road with the Stones and Ike and Tina Turner, and the Yardbirds. They were also on that show before they finally finished. That was the last Yardbirds group when Beck and Page were both in the band at the same time. That was quite a neat package. I Could Eat Stones of the Yardbirds. I think there may have been one other band. I know I was working on it just doing solo and literally comparing the show and holding it all together. I was being paid very little money for doing it, but I didn't mind because it gave me the opportunity of watching Ike and Tina Turner for nothing every night. Because I did that later on, another time when B.B. King made his first appearance in England with his band, and I went out on the road there with them, working for literally my hotel bill and food and booze for the day, simply because it was such a great thrill for me to see B.B. King without having to pay an admission ticket each time.
Can we get into when you were doing pop singing? Or?
Oh, the pop singing bit. A lot of people have asked me why and how that all came about. I really can't give a straightforward answer. I just do not know. I'd signed with Pye Records in England, and they put me with this boy who had become a record producer, sort of one step up from being the T-boy kind of thing. And he was also a songwriter, Tony Macaulay. And we struck lucky with his things. It wasn't the first time that I had flirted with that sort of standard big band orchestral music at all, because in '66 I recorded an album for United Artists called Looking at Long John that did feature a lot of very, very big orchestral things. And but 67, 68, 69 did see me very much in the Las Vegas-y kind of setting, schmaltzy kind of thing. I can't explain it. I can't even claim that it was because I wanted a deal percent-wise with Pye. I mean, 2%. So I didn't really earn that much. Although from live bookings, because I did have a string of single hits in England and Europe, and live bookings were constant, continuous, and for very good bread. But my live bookings, apart from my hits, it wasn't rubbish I was singing. I had a very good band. One of it was Bluesology that I had, and we had some very neat arrangements of some very, very good songs.
I have never heard the pop things that you did, and
I'm not ashamed of them. I mean, they were very well put together, very well recorded, and there's some good stuff there. I mean, like any artist, I mean, some of the stuff was a bit appalling, but on the whole, I wasn't really ashamed of any of it. It's never sold here in America. Maybe that's a good thing. I don't know, but it might be interesting for people to hear that those other kind of things that I can do. But I think they're available. They were available on Chess Janus here, double album that came out called Let the Heartaches Begin. I think they called it. Is that what it was called? And but it's probably been deleted now. But there was a period of my life that I really can't remember too much about because I was drunk a considerable amount of the time.
For those people that join us late, our guest is Long John Baldry, along with Casey Kelly. So what's your new record going to be like? What are you working on now?
Well, I think it's the best album that I've ever done so far. I mean, it's not completed. There's a lot of work to be done. We're off to... when does this program go out, actually?
I couldn't tell you right this minute. In a couple weeks, probably.
Well, in the meantime, I'll be up in San Francisco adding horns, the Tower of Power guys up there. Then eventually we're going back to England to put choirs on and strings and all that, because Jimmy Horowitz, my producer, feels that the symphonic aspect of the album, which is only going to be on 3 or 4 tracks, strings and things, one is, gets a better sound from English violin players. I suppose that's true. I mean, that's where the classical music heart is. But plus the fact that violin players are so expensive here.
That I can understand.
But we've used some very, very good musicians here on the session. Jesse Ed Davis is on, and Klaus Foreman, Casey Kelly. Casey's on it, as well as contributing 3 of the songs on the album. Can't sing them for you today because I haven't learned them properly yet. I haven't got the words in front of me. And there's a Dominic Troiano song. Oh, a lot of people have come up with some very nice songs for me. All, you know, I would say that 3/4 of the album is all brand new stuff, never been heard by the public before. And there's 2 or 3 well-known or quite well-known standards. For instance, there's a Bobby Bland song that he did a couple of years ago, Ain't No Love in the Heart of the City. We've done a lovely arrangement of that, doing that. And, a song that Chuck Jackson did years and years and years ago, I keep forgetting, that You Don't Love Me No More, doing that. And there's one more vaguely well-known song. Oh, a song that Dusty Springfield and Jackie DeShannon cut one time. Dusty did it on her album Cameo. I've forgotten what album Jackie DeShannon did it on, but it was a song, a rather mysterious song called Easy Evil, and that's turned out nice. So, all in all, I think we've got a nice album. Oh, and one very good drunken track from a guy called Jeff Thomas. Do you know him at all?
No, no.
Oh, he's a well-known drunk in...
In what way do you mean drunk?
Well, it's a drunken song written by a drunk and played by that very same drunk as well. Jeff is playing the piano on it, and it really comes through the I ain't gonna take no more abusive treatment. And there's some rude words on it too.
Okay.
Got to be careful about the rude words.
Uh-huh. Is that a new tactic? Producing albums over here and then adding something in England? I hadn't heard of that being
Well, it's the first time that I've actually recorded commercially in America. I've done a hell of a lot of radio things and 1 or 2 TV things, but never actually recorded an album over here in America. And it's been my dearest dream for a long, long time, because I felt that I needed that impetus, that inspiration that I feel can come from America alone, because everything is so dull and dreary in England at the moment, I think. And I've been sitting on my backside for the last 2 years, literally looking at the wall in a sort of state of semi-retirement. And I thought, my God, you've got to get it moving again. So I did the deal with Casablanca, and they said, well, why don't you record in Los Angeles? And I said, yes, 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 get me on the first flight out. And here I am doing it.
Mm-hmm. Reading about you and hearing you talk, I have the impression that your early groups were where the music was centered to a group activity rather than you being the leader, being John Baldry accompanied by a group. Is that pretty much the way it was?
Yeah, well, I think that was the kind of thing, that feeling with everyone out on the road in those days. There was much more a feeling, a genuine brotherly love, instead of this awful competitive thing that's on. I mean, a competitive spirit can be a healthy thing, but sometimes in the rock scene, that competitive thing is slightly veering towards unhealthy, you know. It's very much... the whole thing is very much more geared to material things now. It's like sort of neighbours in a road, you know, because Mrs. Jones has certain quality curtains up at her window. The lady next door has got to have curtains that are even better quality, you know, all that thing going on. And it's very much the same in the rock business these days. And they've tried to turn it into a big society thing, you know, and doesn't quite gel, I don't think. You know, when you read of Mick Jagger going out with Truman Capote and Princess Lee Radziwill, or Rod Stewart dating Gerald Ford's daughter, all this thing, you know, it doesn't quite gel. You know, if you read about Paul Newman or Robert Redford doing these things, it somehow does ring true. But all these people I know from the rock scene, when you read about them doing these, it seems all a bit nonsensical somehow. Tony Tune dreamt it all up.
I'm kind of concerned about, you finish the album, you probably go back to doing a lot of performing again, right?
Yes, certainly. My agents in New York, how they want to handle things this time round, rather than just shoving me out on a tour, you know, one-night stand tour, the length and breadth of this country. What they want to do late spring, maybe a fraction earlier, we don't know at this moment, but just put me out on a number of short seasons. So I do like a week at the Bottom Line in New York, and then maybe a week at the Roxy or one of the other places here in Los Angeles. And most of the major cities, of course, do have this club set up now, which is nice, and I far prefer that. There's certainly not so much money to be earned from doing these kind of venues, but it's much more enjoyable, and you can get much more of an intimacy with your audience than you can standing in the middle of a baseball stadium holding 150,000. And then from the vibrations, we start off with that, because you've got to bear in mind that I'm a stranger to this country now for the last 3 years. I mean, my name may be on some people's lips, but probably a lot of people have forgotten about me, so I've got to get my name back again in front of people. You know, depending on the vibrations that my club performances cause, and then the success, we hope, of the album, coming back later in the year on a major tour with some huge, great big star, and me warming up the concert hall for them. Or who knows, we might strike that lucky that I could come out and headline myself. There are certain areas in America that I can go and fill concert halls on my own name. There are certain areas like Minneapolis, Chicago, Vancouver, a lot of the Canadian places, New Orleans, strangely scattered all over the place, little pockets of Baldry enthusiasts who would come along to see me, you know, even if I wasn't on with another big star. It doesn't work in all. I'm not sure about Los Angeles. I don't know how much of a following I've got here to achieve that. San Francisco, possibly. New York, definitely not at this moment. New York, for some strange reason, I had not cracked yet, but I think New York is much more oriented towards heavy metal music, isn't it? The Led Zeppelins and the Blue Oyster Cults and all that kind of thing. And despite all my changes, that kind of thing I don't think I'll ever be, really.
How do you picture your next band? You picture it as...
Well, I really don't know. You see, I just do not know what the music industry and what the public expect of me this time round, whether they'd like to see me with an English band or an American band. Certainly, musically, I know that I could go home to England and put together a great band. I know that if I was here in the States, I could find a great band. But I just really do not know what the music industry, as I said, and the public at large expect me to do this time around. Whatever happens, my backing singers must be American ladies and black, because I think they come up with the goods, you know, much better than anybody else.
I'll be looking forward to seeing that.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to coming back. You know, I mean, sitting 2 years looking at that white wall really is...